The reception hall smelled of expensive lilies, prime rib, and a thick, cloying desperation that no amount of ventilation could clear. It was a specific scent profile I'd learned to identify over 3 years of shooting high-end weddings to fund my wildlife expeditions. The sweetness of $5,000 worth of hothouse flowers, masking the metallic tang of adrenaline and old champagne. To the guests, it smelled like a party. To me, it smelled like stress. I stood in the shadow of a massive ice sculpture, a swan that was slowly weeping meltwater into a silver drip tray, checking the histogram on my Canon R5. The exposure was technically perfect. The bride was laughing, her head thrown back in a moment of candid joy, the crystal chandelier light catching the diamonds in her hair. The groom, Jacob, was looking at her like she was the only oxygen source in the room. It was a good shot. It was the shot they paid me $10,000 to get. It was the shot that would make the cover of the album, the one they would frame and put on the mantle to prove that, for one day at least, everything was perfect. But my eyes didn't stay on the happy couple. Habit is a hard thing to break, and before I was a wedding photographer, I was a tracker for the Department of Fish and Wildlife in the Yukon. You learn to look for the outlier. You learn to scan the herd for the animal that is separated, the one with its ears pinned back, scanning the perimeter for threats. You learn to read the silence and the noise. You learn that the thing you should be watching isn't the thing making the most noise. I lowered the camera, letting the heavy strap settle against my shoulder, and scanned the room. The lens was my shield, a barrier between me and the chaotic energy of 300 wealthy guests. But without it, up to my eye, I felt exposed. I watched the currents of the room, the waiters weaving through the tables, the bridesmaids whispering in the corner, the father of the bride loosening his tie. Then I saw her, Alexis Rodriguez, mother of the groom. She was standing near the towering wedding cake, a masterpiece of fondant and sugar flowers that looked too pretty to eat and too expensive to touch. She was wearing a dress the color of midnight that hugged a figure most 20-year-olds would kill for. Her dark hair swept up in an elaborate chignon that defied gravity. She was holding a flute of champagne, and she was smiling. To anyone else in the room, to the guests, the waiters, even her own son, she looked like the epitome of success. A tech CEO, a proud mother, a woman in her prime enjoying the pinnacle of her family's joy. She was the anchor of the event, the person everyone wanted to be near. But I was looking through a 70 to 200mm f/2.8 telephoto lens, and magnification tells the truth that the naked eye misses. It strips away the polish. I raised the camera again, focusing on her from across the ballroom. Through the glass, the facade crumbled. I saw the tension in her jaw, the muscle feathering near her ear like a trapped bird. I saw the way her knuckles were white against the delicate stem of the crystal glass, gripping it so hard I worried it might snap. I saw the micro-tremor in her hand, a vibration so slight it wouldn't ripple the champagne, but it blurred the focus peeking in my viewfinder. She wasn't smiling. She was baring her teeth in a defensive posture. She was terrified. The headlines had been inescapable for the last week. Rodriguez Tech, an insider trading scandal. Leaked emails. Suggest CEO fraud. I didn't follow business news. Bears don't care about stock prices, and neither do I, but when you're hired to photograph the woman's son, you do your homework. I knew she was under siege. I knew the sharks were circling. I just didn't realize the enemy was inside the perimeter. She took a sip of champagne, her eyes darting to the entrance. She wasn't looking at the guests. She was checking the exits. And then he walked in. Richard, the ex-husband, the father of the groom. He was tanned, silver-haired, and wearing a tuxedo that fit him a little too well. He moved through the crowd with the easy, shark-like arrogance of a man who assumes the world is paved for his convenience. He stopped to shake hands with a senator, laughing loudly, clapping a hand on the man's shoulder. He was performing. He was marking territory. He owned the room, or at least he thought he did. But then his eyes locked on Alexis. His smile sharpened. It wasn't a smile of greeting. It was the look of a hunter finding a fawn caught in a drift. I watched through the lens. I didn't take a picture. I just watched. He walked straight to her. He didn't rush. He moved with a leisurely confidence that made my skin crawl. He stepped into her personal space, invading the buffer zone that polite society dictates. He leaned down. He whispered something in her ear. Alexis flinched. It was a visceral, physical recoil. She took a step back, bumping into the cake table. A silver fork clattered to the floor. The sound lost in the music. But to her, It must have sounded like a gunshot. Richard didn't back off. He stepped closer, crowding her, using his height to loom over her. He placed a hand on her arm, a gesture that looked affectionate to the room, a comforting squeeze between X's, but through my lens, I saw the pressure. His fingers were digging into her bicep. It was a restraint. It was a threat. Her eyes widened. The panic flared, hot and bright. She looked left, then right. She was looking for an exit, but the crowd was too dense. She was trapped against the table, surrounded by people who were too busy drinking to notice she was drowning. I checked my settings. Shutter speed 1/250. Aperture f 2.8. ISO 1600. I didn't think. I didn't weigh the professional consequences of interfering with the client's parents. I knew the rule. The photographer is a ghost. You document, you don't direct. You certainly don't intervene. But I also knew the rule of the wild. When you see a trap closing, you spring it. You don't watch something get hurt just because it's not your job to stop it. I lowered the camera. I walked out of the shadows. I moved with the silent, rolling gait I'd learned on the trail. Quiet, balanced, eating up the distance without drawing attention until I was right there. I navigated the sea of tuxedos and gowns, a silent current moving against the tide. I stepped seamlessly into the gap between them. "Mrs. Rodriguez," I said. My voice was low, steady, a baritone rumble that cut under the noise of the jazz band. Richard jerked back, annoyed at the interruption. He looked at me like I was a piece of furniture that had suddenly spoken. Alexis looked at me, her eyes unfocused with fear. She didn't recognize me at first. I was just another obstacle. "I'm Grant Mitchell, ma'am. Lead photographer," I said, introducing myself to ground her in reality. "The light on the West Terrace is perfect right now. The snow is reflecting the ambient light. I need a portrait of you. Alone. It's on the shot list." There was no shot list. I shot documentary style. But Richard didn't know that. And Alexis needed a reason to leave that didn't look like running away. "The light waits for no one," I added, infusing my voice with a professional urgency that brooked no argument. "It'll be gone in 5 minutes. And the bride specifically requested a solo portrait of you. She said it was priority 1. Alexis blinked. The fog of panic cleared just enough for her to recognize the lifeline I was throwing. She looked at my face, then at my camera, then back at my eyes. She took a breath, her chest hitching. "Of course," she said. Her voice was shaking, but she forced the words out. She stepped around me. Richard made a move to grab her arm again. I shifted my weight. It was a subtle movement, just a slight rotation of my shoulder, but it put my 6'2" frame directly in his path. I was holding a heavy DSLR camera with a battery grip and a massive lens. It looked like a tool, but in the right hands, it's a blunt instrument. It was a barrier. "Excuse me, sir," I said politely, blocking him. "I need a clear line of sight. Cables everywhere. Safety first." Richard stopped. He looked at me, really looked at me, and saw that I wasn't just a guy in a suit. He saw the scar on my chin from a climbing accident. He saw the way I stood, balanced on the balls of my feet. He saw that I wasn't moving. He realized that the hired help wasn't intimidated by his tax bracket. He sneered, adjusting his cufflinks. "Take your picture, camera boy. She can't hide forever." I turned and followed Alexis. She was walking fast, heading for the terrace doors, almost running. She bumped into a waiter, muttered an apology, and kept going. We stepped out into the cold. The change in atmosphere was instantaneous. The warm, perfumed air of the ballroom was replaced by the biting chill of a mountain winter. The wind was howling, driving snow sideways. The terrace was empty, the stone pavers slick with ice. The fairy lights strung in the trees were whipping violently. Alexis walked to the stone railing and gripped it with both hands. The wind whipped her hair across her face, destroying the expensive styling. She didn't care. She was shivering violently, her bare shoulders exposed to the freezing air. But I didn't think it was just the cold. "Thank you," she whispered. The words were snatched away by the wind, but I read her lips. "He was crowding you," I said, leaning against the stone wall, keeping my distance to give her space. "I don't like poachers." She let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "He's not a poacher. He's an executioner," he told me. He told me he has the rest of the emails, the ones he doctored. He said he's going to release them to the press tonight, during the reception. Unless I sign over my voting shares in the company? Blackmail, I said flatly. He wants to humiliate me, she said, turning to face me. The snow was settling on her bare shoulders, melting against her skin. Here, at our son's wedding, he wants to destroy me while I'm smiling for the cameras. He knows I won't make a scene. He knows I'd die before I ruin Jacob's night. He's using my love for my son as a weapon. She looked small against the vast backdrop of the storm. She looked like a statue made of ice, ready to shatter at the slightest tap. You're freezing, I said. We need to go back inside. I can't, she said, shaking her head frantically. I can't go back in there. He's watching. He's waiting for me to break. If I go back in, I'll fall apart, and Jacob will see, and the day will be ruined. The terrace door handle rattled. Alexis jumped, her eyes going wide with terror. He's coming. I looked around. There was nowhere to go on the terrace. If Richard came out here, she was trapped against the rail with a 3-story drop behind her. Come with me, I said. I grabbed her hand. It was ice cold. I pulled her not toward the ballroom door, but toward the service entrance used by the catering staff. Where are we going? She gasped, stumbling in her heels on the icy stones. Tactical retreat, I said. I pulled her through the service door into a narrow hallway that smelled of dish soap, coffee, and grilled steak. It was bright, loud with the clattering of plates, but it was away from the guests. I scanned the corridor. Waiters were bustling at the far end, with trays of beef Wellington, shouting orders. They didn't see us. To my right was a door labeled linens. I opened it. It was a supply closet, stacked floor to ceiling with tablecloths, napkins, and spare chair covers. It was dark, cramped, and smelled of lavender detergent. In here, I said. I ushered her in. I followed her and clicked the door shut, locking it from the inside. Darkness enveloped us, save for a sliver of yellow light under the doorframe. The noise of the reception was muffled here, a distant thrum of bass and laughter. It felt like being underwater. We're in a closet, Alexis whispered. Her voice was tight, high-pitched. Oh, God. I'm hiding in a closet. I am the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and I am hiding in a closet among the napkins. It's a sanctuary, I corrected, keeping my voice low and calm. No ex-husbands, no reporters, no cameras, except mine, and the lens cap is on. She slumped against a stack of folded tablecloths. I could hear the rustle of the fabric. I can't breathe, she said. I feel like the walls are closing in. My chest, panic attack. I'd seen it before, in climbers stuck on a ledge, in rookies seeing a bear for the first time, the physiological response to a threat you can't fight and can't flee. The body dumps adrenaline, the heart races, the lungs forget how to work. You can breathe, I said. The air is fine. Listen to me, Alexis. I'm going to lose everything, she sobbed. My company, my reputation, my son's respect. He's going to think I'm a criminal. He's going to look at me the way Richard does. Alexis, I said sharply, find my hand. I held my hand out in the darkness. After a second of fumbling, her cold fingers brushed mine. I caught her hand. I held it firmly. My hands were rough, calloused from years of handling ropes and gear in freezing temperatures. Hers were soft, manicured, but strong. Squeeze my hand, I ordered. As hard as you can. She squeezed. It was a weak grip. Harder, I said. Put your fear into your hand. Crush my fingers. Try to break them. Use the adrenaline. She squeezed harder. Her nails dug into my palm. Good, I said. Now breathe. 4 seconds in. Hold for 4. 4 seconds out. Do it with me. I inhaled audibly, exaggerating the sound. She tried to match me. Her breath hitched, stuttered, then slowly began to smooth out. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold, out, 2, 3, 4. We stood there in the dark, breathing in sync. The space was tiny. I could smell her perfume, something complex, like vanilla and wood smoke under the detergent smell. I could feel the heat radiating from her body. Better? I asked after a minute. A little, she whispered. She didn't let go of my hand. Why are you doing this? You're the photographer. You should be taking pictures of the cake cutting. I'm a tracker, I said. Before I did this, I spent years in the Yukon. You learn to watch things. You learn to interpret body language. And you learn that when something is hurt, you don't expose it. You give it cover. She went still. You think I'm hurt? I think you're wounded, I said. But you're still standing. I don't feel like I'm standing. I feel like I'm drowning. That's just the noise, I said. Richard is noise. The scandal is noise. In this closet, none of that exists. In here, you're just a mother at her son's wedding. And you look beautiful. The silence stretched. It wasn't awkward anymore. It was heavy with understanding. He's giving the toast in 10 minutes, she said finally, her voice steadier. I have to speak after him. If I don't go out there, he wins. If I go out there and cry, he wins. Then don't cry, I said. Easy for you to say. You're solid. You look like you're carved out of wood. I'm shaking too, I lied. I hate weddings. Too many people. Too much noise. She laughed softly in the dark. It was a good sound. A human sound. You have a plan? She asked. Always, I said. Here's the strategy. We wait 2 minutes. You fix your makeup. We walk out. I will walk you to the head table. I will stand 5 feet away from you the entire time. I'll be taking photos, but I'll be watching him. If he tries to approach you, I'll step in. I'll drop a lens. I'll trip a waiter. I'll create a distraction. You'd break a lens for me? I have insurance, I said, and I have backup gear in the trunk. You barely know me, Grant. I know you raised a good son, I said. Jacob is a good man. That doesn't happen by accident. That takes a strong mother. And I know a bully when I see one. She squeezed my hand again, hard. Thank you. Ready? No, she said. But, let's go. I opened the door. The bright light of the hallway hurt our eyes. Alexis blinked, then straightened her spine. She smoothed her dress. She lifted her chin. She put the mask back on. But this time, it felt less like a disguise and more like armor. She looked at me. How do I look? I looked at her. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but clear. Her face was pale, but set with a grim determination. She looked fierce. You look dangerous, I said honestly. She smiled. A real, sharp smile. Good. We walked back into the ballroom. I stayed on her flank, a silent shadow. When she took her seat at the head table, Richard glared at her from across the centerpiece. Alexis didn't flinch. She picked up her champagne glass and held his gaze until he looked away. I raised my camera. I focused on her profile. The lighting was dramatic, casting half her face in shadow, highlighting the strength of her jawline. Click. Got it. The storm intensified. By the time the reception ended at midnight, the blizzard was a whiteout. The roads out of the resort were closed. The pass was blocked by an avalanche. We were snowed in. The guests retreated to their rooms, drunk and happy, oblivious to the drama. The staff began clearing the debris of the celebration. I was in the lobby, sitting near the massive stone fireplace, backing up files on my laptop. The hotel was quiet. The wind outside a muffled roar. I had checked the perimeter habit. The doors were drifted shut. The generator was humming in the basement. Alexis walked in. She had changed. The midnight gown was gone, replaced by dark jeans and a gray cashmere sweater that looked soft enough to melt. She was barefoot, carrying her heels in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other. Room service is down, she said, her voice echoing slightly in the empty lobby. The kitchen staff went home before the road closed. This is all I could scrounge from the bar. I have protein bars in my camera bag, I offered. Peanut butter crunch, high calorie, terrible taste. I'll trade you, she said. She sat on the sofa opposite me, tucking her legs under her. We ate protein bars and drank expensive Pinot Noir from paper cups while the fire crackled. It was domestic, strange, and entirely comfortable. He didn't do it, she said quietly, staring at the flames. Richard. He didn't release the emails. He saw you weren't afraid, I said. Threats lose power when the target doesn't run. I was terrified, she admitted, but I knew you were there. I saw you. Every time I looked up, you were there, with that camera, like a sentry. I told you, I'm a tracker. I don't lose the trail. She looked at me. The firelight danced on her face, softening the lines of stress. Is it just a job, Grant? Or do you save people every weekend? You're not people, I said. You're a priority. And no, usually, I just take pictures of cake. She swirled the wine in her cup. I'm in trouble, Grant. Real trouble. The board meeting is Monday morning. Richard stole the hard drive from my home office before he came here. The drive that proves the emails he leaked were doctored. It has the metadata, the original server logs. If I don't get that drive back, I can't prove my innocence. He's going to stage a hostile takeover. Why didn't you call the police? I asked. I tried, she said, her voice tight. The sheriff said with the avalanche and the storm, they can't get anyone up here for 48 hours. My lawyer said we can't get an emergency injunction until the courts open on Tuesday. By then, the board will have voted. Richard knows this. He planned the timing perfectly. He has the drive here? I asked. He must. He smirked at me during the toast. He patted his jacket pocket. He's arrogant. He wants to keep his trophy close. He probably wants to destroy it in front of me. Which room is he in? The guest chalet? She said. Room 402? It's separate from the main lodge. About 100 yards through the snow. You want to go get it? I have to, she said. But I can't break in. Hotel security won't open a guest's room on the word of an ex-wife. They said without a police warrant, their hands are tied, and if Richard catches me, he'll use it against me. Unstable ex-wife breaks into hotel room. It would be the final nail in my coffin. I looked at the window. The snow was piling up against the glass. It was a complete whiteout. He won't expect anyone tonight, I said. Not in this weather. He thinks he's safe. It's a blizzard, Grant. I have snowshoes in my truck, I said. And I have a multi-tool. I spent my 20s retrieving data loggers from wolf dens in zero visibility. This is just a different kind of habitat. I felt the internal tug-of-war. I was a vendor. This was a gray area, bordering on black. But I looked at Alexis, at the exhaustion and the fear she was trying to hide, and the professional distance evaporated. This wasn't about photography anymore. This was about justice. You're volunteering? I'm offering a service, I said, closing my laptop. Retrieval of stolen property. Because he's a bully, I said, standing up. And I hate bullies. And because I want to see you win. We geared up. I went to my truck and got the snowshoes and my heavy parka. I gave Alexis my spare fleece. It swamped her, the sleeves hanging past her hands. I rolled them up for her. The act was intimate, my hands brushing her wrists. She watched my face as I worked, her eyes searching. Ready? I asked. No, she said. Let's go. We went out the side door. The wind hit us like a physical blow. The snow was knee-deep. I broke the trail, stomping down the drifts with the snowshoes, creating a path for her. She followed close behind me, stepping in my tracks. We reached the chalet. It was dark. Richard's room was on the ground floor, thank God. I crept to the window. The curtains were open a crack. I shone my flashlight, cupping the beam with my hand to minimize the spill. Richard was asleep in the bed, snoring. But on the small table on the balcony, a private deck accessible by a sliding door, sat a bottle of whiskey and a cigar ashtray. And next to the ashtray, careless and arrogant, was a small, ruggedized hard drive. He had been out there smoking. He must have left it when the cold drove him inside. He hadn't locked the drive in the safe. He kept it out to gloat over it. I see it, I whispered to Alexis. It's on the balcony table. Is the door locked? She asked, shivering against my back. Probably, I said. But he's not in the room. He's in bed. The drive is outside. He left it exposed. That's a mistake. Can we reach it? The balcony railing is waist high, I said. The snowdrift has ramped up against it. I can climb over easily. I just need to be quiet. If he wakes up, he won't hear me over the wind, I said. I moved to the balcony. I handed Alexis the flashlight. Keep it pointed at his face. If his eyes open, you tap the glass. Got it. I climbed the snowbank. It was packed hard by the wind. I vaulted the railing. It was slick with ice. I landed softly on the snowy deck. I froze, waiting. Richard didn't move. I crept toward the table. The snow crunched softly under my boots. The drive was there, cold, black, unassuming, the thing that held her entire life. I reached out. My hand hovered over it. I wasn't breaking into his room. I was retrieving property from a semi-public space. It wasn't theft. It was recovery. I grabbed the drive. Just then, Richard stirred. He sat up in bed, looking confused. He looked toward the glass door. Alexis tapped the window glass with her fingernail. Click, click. Richard turned his head toward the sound, away from me. He stared at the window for a moment, then groaned and flopped back onto the pillow. I waited 10 seconds. Then I vaulted back over the rail. I landed in the snow next to Alexis. I held up the drive. Got it, I whispered. She stared at it. She reached out and took it, clutching it to her chest like a holy relic. Tears mixed with the melting snow on her face. Go, I said. We retreated. We didn't run. Running in snow is a good way to break an ankle, but we moved with purpose. We didn't stop until we were back inside the main lodge, the heavy door sealing out the storm. We collapsed on the rug in front of the fire. We were covered in snow, breathing hard, adrenaline coursing through our veins. Alexis looked at the drive. Then she looked at me. You're crazy, she said. I'm thorough, I corrected. She started to laugh. It was a hysterical, relief-filled sound. We just burgled my ex-husband's balcony. We repossessed stolen property, I said. She stopped laughing. She crawled across the rug toward me. She stopped inches away. Her eyes were bright, dark, and intense. You saved me, she whispered. Twice. I just provided the assist, I said. You kept the light on him. Teamwork. Grant, she said. She reached out and took my face in her hands. Her hands were cold from the snow, but her palms were warm. You're not just a photographer, she said. She leaned in. I held my breath. I knew this was a line. I was the vendor. She was the client. But the blizzard had erased the world outside, and in here, there were no contracts. She kissed me. It wasn't a tentative, testing the waters kiss. It was a collision. It tasted of red wine and snowflakes and adrenaline. It was the kind of kiss that happens when you realize you've survived something that should have killed you. I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her into me. The fleece jacket bunched up between us. I didn't care. I felt the heat of her body, the frantic beat of her heart against mine. For a moment, the void I carried, the silence of the woods, the distance I kept from people filled up. It filled with her. When we broke apart, we were both breathless. I'm older than you, she whispered, her forehead resting against mine. This is complicated. You're the vendor. I'm the mother of the groom. The wedding is over, I said. The contract is fulfilled, and I don't care about numbers on a driver's license. I care about who walks through the storm. She smiled. What happens now? The roads will open tomorrow, I said. You go back to the city. You present the drive. You crush him. And you? I go back to my cabin, I said. I edit the photos. I send you the gallery. And then, I said, reaching into my pocket and pulling out my notebook. I tore out a page. I wrote my personal number. Not the business line. You call me. When the dust settles. When you're ready to be Alexis, not the CEO. She took the paper. She folded it carefully and put it in her pocket, right next to the hard drive. Tuesday, she said. The board meeting is Monday. I'll be free Tuesday. Tuesday, I repeated. I wrote it down in my own book. Tuesday, Alexis, 7 p.m. You write it down? She asked, touching the notebook. Key dates, I said. I never miss a deadline. Tuesday came. I was in my studio in Denver, editing the wedding photos. I paused on the shot from the reception, the one I took right after the closet. Alexis at the head table, profile in shadow, looking like a queen who had just won a war. It was the best photo I had ever taken. It wasn't just light and composition, it was narrative. My phone rang. Grant? Alexis. I did it, she said. Her voice was light, buoyant, the weight of the world gone. The drive had everything. Timestamps, original headers. Richard tried to deny it, but the metadata doesn't lie. He resigned. The board gave me a standing ovation. Good, I said. Metadata is like tracks in the snow, hard to hide. I'm in the city, she said. I know we said 7 p.m., but I'm outside, she said. I dropped the mouse. I walked to the window of my studio. She was there, standing on the sidewalk, looking up at my building. She was wearing a trench coat and heels, back to being the CEO. But she was smiling, A real, unguarded smile. I buzzed her in. I met her at the door. The lighting is terrible in this hallway, she said, looking around the industrial space. It's tungsten, I said. Warm. Forgiving. Grade my performance, she said, stepping closer. Did I get the shot? You got the shot, I said. Can I come in? She asked. I brought wine and no ex-husbands. That's a good start, I said. I stepped back. She walked in. She looked at the photo on my monitor, her face fierce and beautiful. Is that me? She asked softly. That's you, I said. When you decided to fight, she turned to me. She placed her hand on my chest, right over my heart. I kept the fleece, she said. I stole it. Collateral? I said. I like the quiet, she whispered, looking around my studio. It's just us. Just us, I agreed. I closed the door, locking the world out, locking the focus in. The end.